Stranger Things explaining the Vecna took will theory. So here it is, my first theory video. Even though I've written many theories, I've never recorded a theory with my own voice. So let's see how this goes. I wrote a script. I'm probably not going to follow it to a T because I'm bad at reading and talking. So we'll just take it slow. So this theory is the Vecna took will theory, and I've seen it around on fan pages and stuff like that, but I haven't seen any major outlets pick it up. I think I saw one article, which was nice, but every other article is like, Will might be gay. No, duh, he's probably gay. Like, why do you need 20 articles about the same thing? Or the Duffers forgot Will's birthday. Yeah, that sucks a lot, but it's just a production error. We've already had our fun and upsetness over it. We can just move on. Can you talk about real theories? So, I'm here to talk about the Vecna took will theory. There's a couple of key points that I'm going to try to stick to. So if you'll stick with me, we'll hear them all out and see where this goes. So the key points I want to cover is going to be no, the Duffers did not plan every single itty bitty detail from season 1 to now. That'll be silly, and I don't expect them to really do that exactly. I mean, it is 4 seasons over like 7 years, so that's a lot, and it will be ridiculous, I think, to require them to know everything, but I do think they probably had a basic outline. Second point, no, the Vecna was not physically there in season 1. That's not the point of the theory, so if you're getting hung up on that, that's not the point, but we'll discuss it later. And the last point is how Will was potentially a prime target for Vecna or the Mind Flayer the whole time. Like, Will wasn't targeted by accident or coincidence, maybe. Maybe it was all on purpose. So we'll be discussing that as well. So, on to the first point about how the Duffers did not plan every single little bitty detail. Of course they didn't. I love making theories a lot. I have a whole account dedicated to all my Stranger Things theories and ramblings and whatnot. It's a genuine hobby in between working and playing video games and drawing and stuff. So I understand that fans might be picking out small little details that the Duffers maybe never even considered. That's just how it is in every fandom. Of my many predictions, the only thing there's a couple that I have couple things I have predicted correctly, but I think the one that has been most correct is my theory that Lucas will be struggling between sports like basketball and his nerdiness, and I say that from personal experience. Sort of for me and more for my brother. We're both black, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the black community between what's perceived as normal stuff you should be interested in and stuff that people view you shouldn't be interested in. But anyways, that's a topic for another day. So, all that said, again, I don't think the Duffers are masterminds. I do believe they had a general outline of their story written, and I believe they already confirmed with multiple people that at least since season 1, they already had their mini encyclopedia pamphlet on how and why the Upside Down works. So we can assume that anything related to the Upside Down directly has been thought out, even though there might not have been a name and they probably didn't have all the creatures picked out and stuff like that. They at least knew what the realm was and how it came to be. So that said, I don't think Vecna was in season 1. I don't think they thought about Vecna specifically in season 1, but I do believe they probably already had the idea of the number one plot twist. They even, I think there's an interview with Gayton where he basically throws his own theory out there years and years ago about how one or more of the experiments are trapped in the upside down because of something that happened a long time ago. So
there's this one in this video, and he was saying how other test subjects, besides 11, like 1 through 10, he says that most of them are dead, but others were like banished to the upside down, like they couldn't get out. And because they were in the upside down for so long, and you can see that it had an effect on Will, it had an effect on them because they were in it for so long that they transformed into what was the monster. So the monster was a recent test subject.
I think at least that part was true. You can also find other small things like when they were interviewing the Stranger Things comic author, she said that she was basically allowed to write anything she wanted, but she wasn't allowed to touch this topic of number one. She can write whatever she wanted about all the other kids, numbered kids, but she wasn't allowed to write or even mention number one. So I do think number one being a villain and maybe the central bad guy of the upside down or something, that probably was always in the books. And before, I just want to bring this up too, the whole, oh, but you know, this was originally an anthology series. Yes, it was an anthology series when they pitched it to Netflix. But by the time they were writing the show and getting ready to film and casting people, it was no longer an anthology series. Like maybe they weren't sure about Elle coming back and stuff like that, but it was already going to be a continued story at the end of, well, before they even started filming season 1. So we can just throw that out the water. It's not relevant to the discussion. This was always meant to be a series, so there's going to be some things that definitely were planned out. We just don't know what those things are yet. Let us move on to the second part of this video. The second point, that the Demogorgon was physically there that night and physically kidnapped Will. A lot of people are confused by the Vecna took Will theory because we all know it was the Demogorgon that literally took Will that night, November 6, 1983. I want to emphasize that the point of this theory is not that Vecna came to the real world in the flesh to pick Will up and take him to the other side. Like, no, that's silly. They could always retcon it, but I doubt they'll do that. It was a Demogorgon, okay? The Demogorgon and the actor who played the Demogorgon in season 1 is what took Will November 6, 1983. From season 2 onward, they established the fact that the Upside Down in its entirety is controlled by the hive mind. So everything there, the vines, the Demogorgon, the bats, the dogs, the trees, the flowers, everything in the Upside Down, to our knowledge, is controlled by the hive mind, the mind flayer, whatever it is. Or maybe Vecna. We actually don't know if it's Vecna or the mind flayer in charge. But for the sake of this theory, we'll say the mind flayer. Everything is controlled by the mind flayer, including the Demogorgon that night. And when you're plugged into the hive mind, it can be switched on or switched off. That's exactly how Will explained it in season 3.
But he's lounging at the pool, which is like the least mind flayer thing ever.
Not necessarily. The mind flayer likes to hide. He only used me when he needed me. It's like you're dormant. And then, when he needs you, you're activated.
The theory that Vecna took Will in season 1, it relies entirely on this idea that Vecna, just like the mind flayer, can control all the creatures in the Upside Down. So when people say Vecna took Will in season 1, what they mean is Vecna controlling the Demogorgon took Will that night. Doesn't even require any retconning. It was still a Demogorgon. You might be asking, but why would Vecna take random Will riding home on his bike that night. That is what we'll be discussing in the next section. We've finally arrived to the theory. The whole reason I made this video, a theory that I've been waiting to see people pick apart, but I only see some discussion on Tumblr and nowhere else. So we're going to be discussing in this video, and maybe you can leave your comments and tell me what you think, because my brain has not switched off since this season dropped. Please remember that this is a theory, not necessarily a prediction. I am just speaking my mind and, having a little fun, pass the time. We have like 20 days left, so why not? Let's start at the beginning. I'm going to try to read a little bit more from my script because it is a lot and I don't want to go off on a tangent because I tend to do that. And I want to be as specific as possible. Henry Creel, the son of Victor Creel. Back in the day, I used to believe that normal people couldn't have strong powers outside the lab environment with Brenner and whatnot. So I believed that only the numbered kids in the series would have powers, or strong powers at least, like Elle and Callie, and maybe if any other numbers had popped up. I have always believed that Will had powers, but before this season, I was just like, yeah, his powers are his spider sense, basically, and maybe he'll keep true sight or something, but I never thought a character like Henry Creel could exist, a natural. I mean, it's possible that he was born under weird circumstances too, like Elle. Like we haven't learned what Virginia Creel's crimes were, as Henry said. Maybe she was like Elle's mother and took drugs and stuff while she was pregnant, and that's why Henry Creel was born that way. But I guess we won't know until later. Seemingly, unlike most of the other numbered children, Henry is considered a natural. He developed his strong abilities outside the lab, just chilling at home in his attic, torturing his own family and all the nearby creatures surrounding his home. This opens the door, or the possibility, that there are all kinds of people out there with special abilities who might never realize they have special abilities because they aren't an insane little 12-year-old who thinks he knows how the world works. Let's revisit how Victor Creel described his son.
But Henry, my boy, he was a sensitive child. And I could see he felt something was wrong.
As you might or might not have seen, a lot of people are drawing similarities between that and how Joyce describes Will in season 1.
Look, he's a sensitive kid.
Could mean something, could mean nothing, we don't know. But Will and Henry are also both artists, quiet kids, don't really fit in. People thought there was something wrong with them. Excusing all of Henry's murderous tendencies, they do seem to be sort of similar and have similar mannerisms. Even thematically, they're both bothered with the concept of time. For Will, especially in season 3, he was really, other than his sexual identity issues, he was really struggling with his friends moving on and finding new interests and stuff, while he felt like I don't know if he felt like he was stuck, but there was still so much he wanted to do that his friends just no longer seemed to have interest in. And Henry Creel cranked that up to like a 300 and was like, the entire concept of how humans use time is stupid. And so he decided to break it, or not follow its rules, in his words. What do these similarities have to do with anything? It starts to establish a motive of why Vecna will be interested in Will, and why would he kidnap this random kid, and why didn't Demogorgon just kill him outright? It starts to paint the picture, no pun intended. As we saw in season 4, episode 7, the massacre at Hawkins' lab, other than changing the world to fit his vision, one was looking for a sympathizer, someone talented and powerful like him who could help him reshape the world in his image. Back then, his sympathizer was Elle. Although she was kidnapped as an infant and raised in a lab like many of the other children, Elle could be considered a natural. Like, we don't know how the other numbered children got their powers, but based on what one said, it seems like they were kind of nobodies, or they weren't naturally born with them. Maybe they were forced out of them or something like that. But from all intents and purposes, it seems like Elle, just like Henry, is a natural, and Brenner and one somehow knew this. Maybe for many, many years, one has been carefully crafting his plan, not only to escape, but to shape Elle into this perfect mold to assist him in escaping, and, like I said, to reshape the world in his image, whether it was becoming her friend, or so she thought, telling her the secret to unlocking more power, which were her feelings, positive and negative, though he focused on the negative. I suppose even supervillains get lonely, and he wanted a companion, a little sister. There are many parallels you can draw between Elle and one. Maybe not completely their upbringing, but they both had the experience of being trapped in a lab. Their powers in general, you'll see in the final episode when number one finally gets his powers back. Elle will later technically imitate a lot of Vecna's moves, like the breaking of the neck, and it's very reminiscent of how Elle uses her powers. Elle was his sympathizer. She was the closest thing to himself. He saw himself in her. And that leads us to Will. Now that we're here, I shouldn't neglect to point out the similarities that Will and Elle have too. And they've been having these parallels since season 1. Like, it is so one-to-one sometimes that if it's not on purpose, I just question how the Duffers haven't seen it themselves. Like, maybe they don't rewatch their own show. I don't know. But the similarities are so stark, you'll begin to see the picture even more. Now, Will and Elle, unlike Elle and one, had drastically different upbringings. Like, they do have the similarity of having really, really crappy dads, even though Papa wasn't her dad. But you know what I mean. They didn't have good parental figures. I mean, Will had Joyce at least, and she's great. So there's that. They're both relatively reserved. They're wallflowers. Even though Elle has started to come out of her shell a little more, and Will has always been a little open with his friends, so they have that in common. They're pretty chill with their friends. In season 1 and season 2, Will and Elle have this weird thing going on where they're constantly switching places and sharing a similar role in the story. So in season 1, Will disappears, Elle appears. At the end of season 1, Elle disappears, Will appears. And in season 2, Elle is gone, and Will becomes the omnipresent force, telling everyone about the Upside Down in his own way. Of course, he doesn't know everything either, but you know what I mean. And then in season 2, when possessed Will falls into a coma and can't help anymore, suddenly Elle returns and she takes his place. It's like a back and forth. I like to call it two sides of the same coin. They fill similar roles, and I really love that about them, actually. If you were to dig deeper, many of their scenes actually play out almost identical, like how they're shot and their context. Even some of the relationships they have with characters, like with Mike and Joyce and Hopper, they are strikingly similar. It's it's crazy, and I really hope it's on purpose because I've been ranting and raving about all their parallels for years at this point. You can imagine my disappointment with season 3 where they didn't really follow up on any of this, but it seems like they, returned back to this little plot thread and are filling it back out again. We'll see. So again, we return to the question, why Will? Why would Vecna want Will? I think the answer is simple. Will could be Vecna's sympathizer. I mean, he's not. But I'm saying from Vecna's point of view, Will could be just like Elle, just another lost little kid that he can manipulate to do his bidding. Will could be his perfect chess piece. If he has powers, he doesn't know how to use them, meaning he's easy to manipulate. He has heaps and heaps of trauma, unresolved trauma that he still hasn't figured out. Will is like a blank slate, just sitting there waiting for the taking for a supervillain, that is. So as you can see, this theory relies heavily on these parallels between Will, Elle, and One, or Vecna. Like, for this theory to work, all those similarities have to be on purpose. Like, if we, the watchers of the show, are just noticing all these similarities but they're all an accident, then this theory might mean nothing. I brought up the potential of Will having powers, so I guess I should review those really quick. Don't worry, it's nothing super fantastical or fancy. I'm not usually in that camp. Nothing wrong with being in that camp, but I mean, I guess season 4 has introduced the idea that it's entirely possible. I just don't think they're going to do that with Will's character, especially given how sidelined he's been lately. I doubt it, unfortunately. So what do I think Will's powers are? I'm almost positive that Will has true sight and some form of precognition, and I've added the potential for remote viewing at the end of that. So true sight was introduced in season 2 and it's from Dungeons and Dragons. But I will review the actual definition so you can see for yourself. As described by the Forgotten Realms wiki, true sight was a type of sense that only a small number of creatures possess. Creatures with true sight could, out to a specific range, see in both the normal and magical darkness. As well as that, they could see invisible creatures and objects and automatically see through visual illusions to reveal the original form of a creature or shapeshifter. Those with true sight could also see into the ethereal plane within the same range of their normal true sight abilities. Helmed horrors possess this rare sense. Some mages could cast true seeing, giving them temporary access to this sense. So Mike's description of Will's ability in season 2 being true sight was very, very accurate. Almost fits what happens with Will to a T. He described it as like being stuck between two slides of a Viewmaster, which is sort of what true sight is. He's seeing into the ethereal plane or the upside down from his position, and only in the range around him. So just like you would be able to see with his actual eyes, he's seeing around him with his psychic brain eyes into the upside down. Will didn't seem to obtain this ability until he was stuck in the upside down. So it's led many people to question whether this is actually an ability or just like a disease or, something like that, or something that the Mind Flayer gave to him. But Will had this ability years before he was possessed by the Mind Flayer. The Mind Flayer doesn't appear until season 2, and leading up to that, Will has been in and out of the upside down for a year at that point. People that's relating his true sight visions to Vecna's spells or waking nightmares, they aren't the same. In season 2, Will specifically mentions even how the Upside Down has changed, and we can mark that change as the Mind Flayer arriving or appearing in Hawkins for the first time. Because prior to that, he's just going in and out casually without any creatures or beasts or any other dangerous things around. It's just him in a place he doesn't want to be.
I heard this noise, and so I went outside, and it was worse.
How was it worse?
There was this storm.
At that point in season 2, Will is not hooked up to the hive mind yet. Not until he gets on the field. And the incident on the field is much, much more similar to Vecna's curse. He's stuck in one stationary place. He's unable to move. He can't interact with anyone or anything. He's just in the moment and he can't snap out of it. Even his eyes are flickering up, just like someone who's about to die from the curse. Luckily, the Mind Flayer's curse, I guess, or maybe it's still Vecna's curse, doesn't kill him. So that's what I got for True Sight. I think under certain circumstances, there's a potential that Will could still use True Sight. Yeah, I think that's his own thing. Moving on, precognition. According to Wikipedia, precognition is a psychic phenomenon of seeing or otherwise becoming directly aware of events in the future. In more layman's terms, is very similar to spider sense for Spider-Man. Spider sense in Spider-Man is considered precognition. Will's tingly goosebump sensation on his neck is very, very similar to a spider sense. So that's why I've decided to dub this ability precognition. Will retains this goosebump precognition ability before and after he's possessed by the Mind Flayer. So even if you believe his true sight was specifically driven by the Mind Flayer, his goosebumps aren't. They remain and they tell him when danger is coming, specifically upside down danger. I also believe this ability is specific to Will because we don't see any of the flayed people such as Billy displaying this. Now, we can just chalk that up to none of those people were unpossessed like Will. We didn't focus on them like we focused on Will. Even when Will was possessed in season 2, episode 4, he still got that goosebump sensation if his mind thought he was in danger. So when Joyce filled the tub with hot water, at that point, his mind had been hot-wired by the Mind Flayer to dislike heat. So he didn't want to get in the hot water, and he got his precognition of danger. Don't get in the tub. We don't see Billy or Heather, the two most focused on flayed people. They don't really act like that to dangerous situations, right? So that's why I think Will definitely has precognition, and it has nothing to do, it might have something to do with his experience in Upside Down, but I believe that is his ability all on his own. I don't think that one can be debated. It should also be noted that it's specific to Upside Down or supernatural related things, because he didn't get any warnings about the shootout that happened at his brand new house. This ability will definitely crop up again, given in the animated poster for Volume 2. Will is once again touching his neck. Hopefully in Volume 2, it won't only be touching his neck, and he'll be able to do more with that ability of his. We're going to get to the final potential power, and that is remote viewing. In Season 2, Will is able to see Hopper trapped in the tunnels in a dream. Also, he's able to lead Joyce and Bob to where Hopper has been captured by the tunnels and the vines. The Mind Flayer later uses this ability to force Will to tell everyone his location and to trap the scientists and all of that. So this one is very questionable. Like, remote viewing is an ability that Elle has, and also an ability we saw number 10 use. And I'm going to chalk up to Vecna also having that ability when he's searching for his next victim. So that's what remote viewing is, basically, is being able to find people. We haven't seen Will use this ability since before or after he was possessed by the mind flayer. So this might be a mind flayer specific ability, and we can leave it at that. Now that we've gone over the 3 abilities I think Will has displayed so far, which is precognition, remote viewing, and true sight, I believe for a villain like Vecna in the mind flayer, true sight, being able to see into other dimensions basically at the snap of a finger, is a pretty valuable ability. Like, yes, there is remote viewing, but is that really the same as having an avatar in another world who can show you everything one for one, who can listen to everything, who can interact with stuff? Like, I think having a vessel in another dimension is the goal here, because I don't believe Vecna is able to live outside of the Upside Down anymore. And that, my friends, brings us to the conclusion. I've written out the conclusion, and I'm going to read it word for word so that we can summarize everything that we have discussed, and hopefully that I have trimmed down so it's not just me rambling. Here we go. Vecna, controlling the Demogorgon, sought out a useful vessel on the right side up the day El accidentally opened the gate between the 2 worlds. It's possible that it followed Will as early as Will leaving Mike's house that night. If you pay close attention to Will leaving Mike's house that night, only Will's bike and Mike's garage lights flicker, not the rest of the house, and seemingly nothing else around the neighborhood. That seems to say to me that something on the other side was standing basically right next to them. Vecna purposely placed a Demogorgon in Will's path on his way home. Vecna had the Demogorgon follow him home in a similar way that Vecna stalks his own victims, just walking behind him. Vecna blocked all communication so Will wasn't able to call anyone and ask for help. Vecna, using a Demogorgon and telekinesis, unlocked Will's door instead of busting through the wooden door or the glass window or just breaking through the wall itself like it will in later seasons when it's hunting Joyce and Jonathan, Nancy and Steve. It didn't enter the house. It instead found a way to sneak up on Will while he was in the shed and didn't bust down the shed door or break the windows or the wall. It very meticulously stalked and captured Will without leaving any evidence behind of what happened. As a final little detail, the light in a shed does not flicker and vibrate and do all that fancy stuff. It just glows very, very brightly and eventually goes out. Not unlike when Vecna uses a spell on his next victim, or when El closes the gate in season 2, and lastly, when Will is trying to communicate with his mother in season 1. Vecna orchestrated Will's kidnapping that night as a first step in his plans to make his way back into the real world and change it in his own vision. Will was not meant to die, but to stew in otherworldly juices and trauma to become a piece in the game Vecna needed him to be. Will was supposed to be his avatar in the real world. I doubt it was in the plans for them to find a way to exercise Will and close the gate. Was certainly explained why in season 3 it was dead set on killing El, because El is the wrench in everything they seek to do. And that's all I got for you. That's how I'm going to conclude my video. I really, really love this theory. I hope it amounts to something, you know, it'll be fun. A lot of people use this theory to say Will's going to turn to the dark side or something. I don't think so. I just think, maybe, of course, Vecna's going to try, like, you know, the classic bad guy trying to corrupt the good guy and mess up his mind and brainwash him and that kind of stuff. I don't think they'll go for another full-on Will gets possessed storyline, though. I think it's going to be more like maybe it does try to possess Will again, but Will has a much better chance of fighting it off the second time or something like that. That's what I'm hoping for. I really want Will to get his time to shine and to get his opportunity to take on the Upside Down that's been ruining his life all these years. Like, it kind of sucks that he's never gotten a chance to punch the bad guy in the face, to put it simply. He's always literally in the background watching, unable to do anything. So it would be cool if all of this stuff gave him the opportunity to get his little payback. When you really think about this theory, it makes sense. It will make sense to move the buyers out of Hawkins for a little while, because all the buyers are prime targets for Vecna's whole plan. They're all messed up, okay? All the buyers are jacked up. But I'm gonna wrap this video up now. Thank you all for watching. I suggest not subscribing to me, because this channel is just my personal channel that I put all my crap on. It's not meant to do anything. But if you have comments about this theory or have your own theories and stuff, please leave a comment, because I will definitely read and respond to them. That said, have a good day.